Hey there, welcome back. So this is going to be a part 2 about coffee. And actually, it's not going to be so much about the actual coffee, like the coffee beans or the coffee that you would drink, but it's going to be focused more on the brewing of the coffee and the options out there. And I just want to talk about, various coffee machines and coffee makers and things that you might want to think about. Okay. So there, like I mentioned in the last episode, we have gotten really into coffee in America. We are a crazy, coffee-centric society. And there are so many options these days with coffee machines, coffee makers, you name it, I was talking about in the last episode how when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s that, there was a lot of coffee, but it was just so basic. Like, it was just kind of your little basic Mr. Coffee machine, that somebody might have at home, or somebody's family might have, like a percolator, which I don't know if that makes good coffee or not. But now everything's just so kind of bougie and fancy, and we've got these pour over things and just all kinds of stuff. But anyway, where I'm going to start with as far as all that is I want to talk about the coffee makers that, gosh, I don't know when exactly they came out. It's probably at least about 20 years ago. But the ones that use the little kind of coffee pod type things almost. I'm not sure really exactly what to call them, but basically it's kind of a little plastic type cup, and there's coffee inside, and you pop it in, do the lid down, press the button, and it brews through. Those were super convenient, and they were kind of a marvel, honestly, when they came out. Such a time saver. Some issues just to think about. I'm not like trying to say this is horrible or wrong or anything, but you're brewing through plastic. It punctures a little hole in the top. I think it's usually like some kind of paper lid or foil lid. It sends the hot water through. Well, and I think it punctures it maybe in the top and the bottom because it's got to have a way to come out, right? So you're brewing through plastic. Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm not here to judge. You might like the taste of plastic in your coffee. But I don't think that's probably the best thing in the world. There's chemicals like BPA and all kinds of stuff that just, we probably don't need a side of plastic with our coffee. Also, those type of machines, and I don't know if they're still made this way, but I know that, years ago, we had one of those types of coffee brewing machines. And the way that it works is there would be an area that you'd pour the water down into. And then the machine would pull that water into kind of an internal cavity. Okay? And this is similar to something that I had mentioned on an episode about water and about like us having a water delivery service, and like our dispenser was kind of, at one point, our dispenser was kind of made like that, and we ended up sending it back. We just couldn't tolerate it. The bottles were underneath, and it would pull it up through kind of a little hose pipe thing, but it would pull it into an internal kind of cavity area where it would just sit there and be stored. The water would end up, once I dispensed it, it would taste like plastic. Well, it's kind of the same concept with those coffee makers. And there's really no way to get that water out again unless you just brewed, some coffee. Or, you wouldn't have to put the little cup in there. You could just turn the cycle on and run the water out. But like, if that water sat in there for a while, yes, it could sort of absorb the taste, or maybe even, I don't know, does plastic smell? Anyway, we'll just say taste, the taste of the plastic. But also, the water could grow biofilms, and that's not good. So I would just say overall, maybe let's just talk about it for health's sake, because this is what this channel is about. That might not be the best thing. Now, I know, when you travel, those types of machines are in hotel rooms and everything. And it probably, doing it every once in a while might not be that bad. But for every day, there's probably some better options. I will say that there are some machines that kind of brew coffee in a similar way to those. But what I like about them is, number one, the little pod type things, for lack of a better word, they're not made out of plastic. Now, they do tend to be made, I think, from like aluminum. And aluminum has its own worries. And then another thing about those machines is that where you put the water in, it's in this kind of side container, I guess, and it will only bring the water out of that container and into the unit when it's going to brew the cup of coffee. So it's not in some kind of internal cavity or bladder where it can absorb the flavors of plastic and grow biofilms. And then I will say that those aluminum kind of pod type things, you can recycle those. So that's nice. That company has some kind of mailer bags where you can collect the used coffee pod things in there, and then either send it off to that company, or I think some retailers who sell those machines might take them back and then mail them off to the company. But anyway, that is kind of a nice option. Also, there's a whole thing about black plastic, and I don't know if y'all have heard about this. We just heard about it probably several months ago, I think, kind of on the news. So I did a little bit of a dive with the research to just say, what is all of this about? But you have to admit, if you just look at the category of coffee makers, most of them are made with black plastic, and maybe stainless as well. The issue comes, and this is just as far as the research I could find, where when black plastic is being recycled, they put it through these machines that kind of tries to sort the plastic according to categories. They are called NIR, near infrared sensors. These machines have near infrared sensors, which are able to kind of sense which type of plastic, and then it sends it in the different categories. Well, the black plastic absorbs that light of the sensor, and so that doesn't work. It kind of renders that plastic invisible to the sorting machines. It's just not able to be recycled very well. Black plastic isn't. And so what happens is several things. Either those black plastics can end up being sent to landfills, being incinerated, or mislabeled, or it ends up contaminating other plastics, because black plastic is such a commodity. I mean, you just think about it, it's everywhere. It doesn't show stains, and so it has a lot of advantages, like food containers. You think about, you go to the grocery store and maybe you buy a frozen lasagna or something, and a lot of times it'll be in a black plastic tray. So it's a very kind of popular commodity, and because of that, and there's just a real demand, sometimes black plastic that's been used, say, in electronics, like in, say, computers and whatnot, ends up being recycled and is in that kind of contaminated, black plastic recycling stream. And the reason that you need to worry about that is that a lot of times the black plastic that is used for, say, computers, it has some flame retardants in it, because, and this, I never even thought about this, but it's interesting. I mean, computers, they get hot, right, when they're doing all their processing and everything, and so they put those flame retardants in that black plastic so that your computer won't catch on fire. Well, those flame retardants, they are not good for you. They could possibly cause cancer and be, endocrine disruptors and all of that. Now, we would hope that the manufacturers of brand new coffee makers would not use any of that kind of contaminated plastic. But there's just a lot of businesses out in the world, and so I don't think you always know. There are some companies who have guaranteed, and these are companies that make coffee makers. So I found this information out from America's Test Kitchen. We'll reference this article, so I won't mention the brands, but there were like 3 brands that they confirmed who used the virgin black plastic. But then you still also get into the whole thing of, do I want to even brew my coffee in virgin black plastic? Maybe not. My husband and I, we had actually kind of talked all this through, ironically, about a year ago. It was about this time last year. It's just kind of those moments where you're like, yeah, maybe it's time to make a change. So we just kind of on a whim decided, I don't think we want to use a regular coffee maker anymore. And we ended up giving it to a family member, and you say, oh, well, look, you're going to go and contaminate your family member. I don't know if our coffee maker had contaminated plastic in it or not. And this particular family member, his coffee maker went on the fritz, and he was glad to have it. His coffee maker that went on the fritz, we don't know about either, right? Some people are just more into this than others. Some people don't care, and that's okay. It's something that I think about a lot, and my husband thinks about a lot. We're very into our health, and we just try to be really conscientious, but we're never trying to say, oh, you have to do this. People have to kind of come to this point on their own. It's their own path. It's their own journey. Just like this is mine. So you say, okay, well, if you got rid of your coffee maker, then what have y'all been using? We decided to just do the French press pots. And we have done French press. We've had a number of French press coffee pots through the years. In fact, it was kind of something that we would give my husband for Christmas. For some reason, like, you know, they have this kind of borosilicate glass that where the coffee is brewed, and they would get broken a lot of times. Like, it just would be accidental, but maybe the French press would be sitting next to the kitchen sink, and it would just accidentally get knocked over, you know, whatever. I can't tell you how many French presses that we, you know, broke accidentally. So it was like, we would give one to my husband for Christmas, and then we'd use it for a few months. Then it would get broken, and then, yeah, we might give him another one the next year for Christmas. But anyway, we've been through several. We like that way of brewing coffee, and we've done a lot of other things through the years as well. I mean, we've had a you know, kind of a pour over type method maker that is real famous, and we've just had all kinds of coffee makers through the years. But we just decided that there was like less plastic with the whole French press method. And I want to show you, we've got 2 French presses here at the house. One of them is this one, which was kind of, I think my daughter may have given this to my husband last year for Christmas. You can see it's got the glass, and it's got kind of a stainless holder, but it does have a plastic lid, and then this part that the coffee goes through when you pour it, you know, that's that black plastic as well. And you know, we were trusting that it would be fine, but we also were kind of thinking, what if it isn't? And so then we said, well, let's see if we can find a French press that doesn't have that. And shortly after Christmas, we went to a retailer. I don't know, it's a big retailer that's from Europe, and we don't have one exactly where we live, but there is one about 3 hours away. And this has got some water in it from me washing it. But anyway, we found this one, and it's all stainless. It has this little cork base that it sits in, and then a little kind of wooden knob for the top. This thing has lasted us the whole year. Obviously, it hasn't gotten broken. And so, you know, French press might seem a little involved or daunting. I do put it a little bit more in possibly the category of, say, brewing tea. I think of brewing tea as more of like a kind of a routine, right? There's a few more steps to it. And coffee is just more, you think of as kind of this quick, let's just get it brewed and get it drunk and get our caffeine and get on with the day. You know, it's just more of kind of rush type thing. Whereas I feel like tea and just stopping to have tea, like especially in the afternoon, you know, for afternoon tea, you know, it's just more of a, let's slow down. Let's enjoy a cup of tea. Let's discuss life, you know, all of that. But I do think that the French press lends itself very well to kind of that energy, or however you want to say it, you know, because you've got to get your beans and grind your beans. They need to be ground just a little bit coarser You don't want extremely fine grounds for your French press. You know, you've got to heat up your water, and you need to obviously heat the water up in something separate. You know, when you have a regular coffee maker, obviously it does all of that, right? It heats up the water and it brews it. And there are some machines out there even that will even grind the beans. They'll do all of it. But we have a kettle, like a kind of a self-heating kettle that we use to heat the water for our French press coffee. And of course we use it for our hot tea as well. So, you know, you get your coffee ready, you grind the beans, you put it in the bottom of the pot, you heat your water, and then when your water's ready, and you don't have to do this step, but it is nice. And you do what's called blooming it. So you pour a little bit of water just to kind of barely cover the grounds. And then you can get like a chopstick, or a lot of times we'll just use kind of like a table knife, like a butter knife. And you just kind of go around and you gently stir those grounds and get them very saturated with the water. And like I said, it's called blooming out the grounds. And you'll notice this kind of crema or foam will come out. I mean, it doesn't look like white foam, but it's kind of this brownish looking foam. And then you pour the rest of the water, you know, in the French press. And then you wait. Then you wait for it to brew. It's usually 3 or 4 minutes. Then you push that plunger down, all the way down. And so that kind of seals off those grounds. And then you pour your cup of coffee. And if everything works right, you won't have any coffee grounds in your cup of coffee. And ours has done an excellent job. Like it really works well. We don't have coffee grounds in our coffee. You know, there are a few downsides. It's a little bit more to wash up. And I will say this, and this goes back to my previous episode about, you know, being concerned with mold and mycotoxins in your coffee beans. I mean, my main focus with that episode was saying, hey, if you're a coffee drinker, you probably want to find a brand of coffee that is batch tested and guaranteed to, you know, to basically be mold and mycotoxin free. And we buy a coffee that is, but no coffee is probably going to be 100% mold and mycotoxin free. And so with your French press, you want to make sure that you wash it out really well. Like, because if you just dumped the grounds out and rinsed it, and there was some microscopic mold left from your coffee beans, then it could contaminate the next batch. You know, I try to just put a little dish soap in there and, you know, clean it out really well after each use. And a lot of French presses, and it does depend on how they're made, but that, you know, kind of center part that's made of like borosilicate glass, which is kind of like the tempered glass. A lot of times those also can go in the dishwasher, and you might want to, you know, run it through a dishwasher, say once a week or something like that, just to make sure it gets kind of a super clean, super sanitized clean and that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in some of this research that I've been doing about coffee and mold in coffee and mycotoxins and all of that. It just kind of seems to be this natural progression that people who care about that also land on brewing their coffee in a French press. I just thought it was ironic because, like, my husband and I, we just came to that completely on our own. You know, we just were talking things through. We were worried about all the black plastic that we'd had to brew in those coffee machines. And then we just were like, hey, what about a French press? So we're not the first people, obviously, to think about this, but I just thought it was kind of cool that sort of the, I guess, more granular you get, that you kind of lend, or it kind of lends itself to brewing in a French press, or maybe some kind of a pour over coffee maker or whatever. Anyway, lots to think about. You got to just kind of make your own decisions, and you know, it's what you have time for every day. You know, like I mentioned on the other episode, I'm not the world's biggest coffee drinker. I certainly enjoy a good cup of coffee, and I do enjoy it in the mornings. But my husband travels a lot for work, and so if he's here, then we'll make a pot of French press, and I'll have a cup with him. But if he's not here, if he's out of town, then I will usually just make some hot tea. That whole French press thing works for us because, like, when he's here. He's not having to rush out the door to head to work. You know, it can be a little bit more slow paced, I should say, and we have time to grind the beans and do the heating up of the kettle, and you know, just that whole routine. So that works for us as a couple, as a family, whatever. It may not work for you. If it does, I would say it's a great method. And there's a lot of different kinds of French presses out on the market. There's, you know, the glass and plastic. There's the glass and metal. There are all stainless steel French presses, and then there are ceramic French presses as well. So you got a lot of options. Kind of fits the bill with whatever preferences you might have. So I would say give it a try. It's really kind of fun, and the coffee is great. I just you know, the flavor of the beans really has time to infuse in the liquid that's brewing, and we just love a good pot of French press. That's about all I have on that topic, but it's just lots of interesting things to think about, and you know, you do what you can, right? At the end of the day, you do what you can, and if you can make some tweaks and make some changes, and you know, just choose a few things differently here and there, it might really make a big difference for your health. So, all right, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you later. Also, if I end up not doing any more episodes before Christmas, I hope you and your family have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you.